What was the pivotal moment when you knew you wanted to be a vocal coach?
So we were gigging. I was a professional musician. I wasn't doing any teaching. And I remember the moment distinctly. And this lovely girl, she came up and there was something in her eyes. And she came up after a show and we'd been singing. She came up to me and all she said, "Can you teach me how to do that?" And it really struck and it really caught me off guard. And I thought, oh my God, I was like, I can try. and that was it. That was the first time. And when I think back on it, what's really lovely is that's actually how my mum and dad met, because my mum approached my dad many, many years before, and she went up to him after a gig and said, "Can you teach me to do that?" So it was happening again. And yes, that's how I had my first student. And then this lovely guy called Matt Russ, he runs a big organisation, Music Teachers, and he happens to need a music teacher where I live, which was really a happening of chance. And so he needed a teacher as well at the same time. And he really taught me a lot about the business side, because that was a whole different ballgame as well. So he came along at a really great moment. Still friends today. He's a lovely, lovely guy. And yeah, it went from there, and I just ended up really, really enjoying it. And here I am today, still doing it.
Yeah, it is so incredibly fulfilling, right? I'm also a voice teacher for speakers and also singers. So I can totally feel how you might be feeling, especially in the moment, having your first student, someone who's really trusting you with their voices, right? With their whole being, and you kind of trying to help them. How did you get into music in the first place? Did it come from your mom or dad?
Yes, me and my sister were born into a bluegrass, which is weird for the UK. There's a small bluegrass scene. So they were musicians. And me and my sister were doing harmonies when we were very, very small, and we just naturally grew up with it. So much so that I thought everybody grew up to, I thought everybody was in this world, which is still interesting to me when people come for lessons and they're coming to me to bring them into a musical world, because they might not have grown up with music with their parents. But yeah, so we were really lucky in that respect.
Me too. That's a very similar story. My older sister and I, we used to do so much music together ever since we were little, because my mom kind of taught herself by ear to play the accordion. I'm from Asia, from close to Russia. So she always used to play old Russian ballads and sing to it. So she taught herself how to do music and all that stuff. She's quite talented in that, or gifted rather. And we used to dance and sing while she was playing. So it was a natural environment in which you kind of start to learn using your own voice, using your body, and kind of developing that type of confidence, right? And so I discovered how people were looking for that, right? And for, in your case, the same thing, right? They were kind of really curious about, wow, how do you understand that even, right? This complex thing, right? The music and the voice, and how to actually use it. And why do you believe it's so important to actually take time as an adult now to have time for yourself, but specifically to sing and to indulge in music and develop yourself in that realm, even if you don't want to be a professional singer, right? Why would that be important?
So with most things, I always have to look at my own experience, because it's very hard to go out. So if I look at myself, I want to give people the best energy I can, and I always want to give them the best. And to do that, it's really important that I recharge myself and I have my own time to do the things that I love. And admittedly, I put my hand up, I don't so much, I should do, and I want to meditate. I don't meditate, but the closest thing that I have is singing. So when I sing, I'm not thinking about the washing or the shopping list or the jobs I have to do. I'm focused, I'm in the moment, and I'm loving what's happening. And sometimes I'll sing and it's this experience. And when I finish, I don't even know what's happened. You come back down again. So it's so close, I think, to meditating for me. And it's the recharge, and then I can go out and I can give energy to other people, and because I have such a positive experience, I feel like people should find that for themselves. And it might not be singing, and that's okay. I think everybody has something. It could be art, It could be standing up on your stand-up paddleboard in a lake, or surfing, or anything that you just feel really at peace in that one, and you're recharging, and this time for yourself. You do this and you go through this process for you, and it's a win-win, because then you have this energy to go out to the world and give that energy to other people and be, I hate the best version of yourself, maybe. And so that's my feeling. I feel really strongly about it, and I'm disciplined with myself about doing that.
Every time we engage with our own bodies in whatever way possible, whether it is sports, art, or music, we kind of reconnect with ourselves. I think especially nowadays, with all the social media and all the bombardment that we have every day, with all the news and all the bad stuff that is happening, I think reconnecting with yourself is one of the most important things. So having that type of hobby, that you really find time to develop a hobby that has something to do with your own body, that goes beyond just doing your nails and your hair, right? When we talk about women now, I find it so important, because you not only reconnect with your own body, with your own identity, who am I while I'm expressing myself, but you are kind of redefining, you are growing, you are developing your skills. And when it comes to your voice, right, it's so much more important when you have a business where you are like a spokesperson even for your own brand, right? Using your own voice, developing the sound of it. Like you know that, right? Just like I do, that how you sound is enormously important and will play a huge role in what your brand image will be in the end. So, and some people might come in and tell me like I'm 46 now. Isn't it too late for me to learn singing? Is it not too late to improve my voice? Because I've been speaking like that forever. I've not been able to sing at all for over 40 years now. Now you're telling me I can sing? Like, is this true that it's too late?
No, absolutely not. I love working with adults, because if you think about it, an adult is going to bring so much to the table, because by now in life you've got an eclectic taste in music. You've heard lots of different types of music that you can bring to the table. You're kind of, in some ways, you're going to be a bit more comfortable in your skin. So, and you're happy to go through the learning process. I've had so many adults that have started exactly like you say, and they've never sang before. And then that lovely feeling of, wow, I never knew I could do that with my voice. I never knew that was possible. And you're like, yeah, just keep on going. And people end up going on this incredible self-discovery journey. It's so much more than the songs. The songs give us the vessel, but it ends up being so much more self-discovery. And as you say, if people are professional, it can bleed into how they're going to speak at work and their breathing. If someone's anxious about doing public speaking at work, they're going to now focus maybe on some breathing and just stay a bit centered. And so it's going to trickle into all these other areas for an adult. And absolutely, it's never too late, I don't think.
And what are the other misconceptions, would you say, or myths that people come at you when they first want to work with you, or they rejected it in the first place? I don't need it. I don't want it because... What do you get to hear?
I think we have something, as a human being, perceived judgment, because of the social patterns that we end up, we can't avoid social patterns that's around us. An individual will assume that there's judgment when actually there isn't, because all these other individuals are too busy worrying if they're being judged themselves, right? Everybody's worried about themselves. So actually people aren't too bothered about what you're doing. And sometimes we have this perceived idea that we're being judged when it's not really the case so much. Just follow your path. If you have a calling to something and you really want to do it, then use this time, this window. We don't get that long on this planet. And actually, we're not going to get that long of being healthy at the prime, when we feel like we can run around and we can travel the world if we want. But you don't get that for your whole entire life. You get this window. So use that window. And if there's something calling you and you really feel strongly, you've got to go for it. I think you owe it to yourself.
And you do mostly popular songs or commercial music with people, right? And if someone says that now commercial music oftentimes prioritizes technical perfection, right? Instead of genuine emotional expression. How do you actually balance these aspects in your coaching?
So for me, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got emotion and technique. Emotion is the why and technique is the how. And they both come together as this partnership. So it's not really one or the other. And it's a really interesting, like, it doesn't matter where somebody is on their journey of learning. I think that's always an interweaving partnership that's working together. So I'm not really exclusively one or the other. I'm trying to figure out, when we're singing, quite a lot of the time, we're going to come back to what's the emotion that's required, or what message are you trying to send out? What's the emotion that you want? And then the next part will be, are there any blocks in the technique that's stopping you from having that freedom to express that emotion? So yeah, it's probably slightly more guided by the emotion as the core, but definitely the technique needs to be there so that you can have that freedom in the voice. And the program, the way I've set it out, which I think works and I really like it, is it starts at the beginning with a toolkit, which is kind of working on technique and showing possibilities and ideas and choices that a singer might not have known about. So they go, oh, okay, that's cool. So that's kind of technique. And what that does is then it goes to the next level, which is more about the emotion and the choices, because you've got this foundation of this toolkit. So you can decide, right, I've learned about that and I know that I can choose that. And now that's the emotion and I can do that safely and with my voice, and I can sing for hours and hours and hours and I can do it safely. So yeah, it goes from toolkit to emotion in that kind of order. If when we watch singers, I think if someone is 100% technique but doesn't have any emotion, or 100% emotion but there is no technique, or something's really blocking, that's not going to be quite the performance that if there's a bit of both there, then you're really going to floor your audience. Then your audience is going to just be on their knees, because you kind of need both, I think. And it doesn't matter what genre. I think that goes for all styles.
Absolutely. Also, in my experience as a vocal coach and as a singer-songwriter myself, developing my own voice, I discovered that absolutely. Also, in my experience as a vocal coach and as a singer-songwriter myself, developing my own voice, I discovered that before you start singing, you really have only your emotional world as a speaker, right? You know how to express your voice with speaking, right? But when it comes to singing, you have to use your voice in a very different way. And if you don't know the technical part of how to actually use your voice, your emotions will never find a place, right, to really come out and shine through that new vocal technique, because these are two different ways to use your voice, speaking and singing. So I absolutely agree with you. There has to be technique. So people who say, oh, you are focusing too much on technique, that will rob me of my emotions, is completely wrong, right? You have to have certain basics of vocal technique to be able to access your emotions through that box, if you will, right?
Sort of understand emotion, because at some point in our life we've probably experienced different things. But when it comes to more specialized technique, it's not necessarily the case that you would have known about it. So it's new and it's quite fun to explore what you can do. But I do cross over. So if we need to get more, say, tilt in the larynx, which is more of a technique, then you're going to use the emotion of cry to do that. If we want to work on our breathing, if we feel the happiness and the joy, we can help let that breath in a different way. So the emotion can really influence the technique as well. It's not just a one. It's really interesting. Or confident, posture. If you want good posture, you're like, okay, bring out some confidence, and that's going to bring some technique to your posture. So use emotion. If anyone out there is training, use your emotions to also guide your technique as well, definitely.
Yeah, and the access to your emotions is also quite different when you start singing, joy, for example, right? You would express it in a very different way when you are speaking, but once you develop the singing skills or the vocal technique, all of a sudden you have to use different tools almost to express the same thing. So to explain it in a very simple language for those who are just starting out or don't know why that would be necessary to have vocal technique in order to be an expressive singer. And the thing is, when you only learn the vocal technique, you will not benefit from singing, is my personal opinion, because without emotion, we are merely robots, right? What we strive for as human beings, I feel, is in every moment we want to feel human. We want to and what makes us human is actually emotion, right? In many fields, people try to disregard emotions when it actually makes us human, right? So through singing, we actually have the chance to tap into a realm that can enhance our emotions in a very beautiful way. It is a healing process. At least for me personally, when I started singing, I did it because I had no other way of expressing myself except through writing and singing. And so it was an extremely healing process. And recently I read a blog article, I think, about that musicians and artists oftentimes struggle to let go of that trauma because they fear that they will not be creative anymore. And I found that very interesting. It is so true. We oftentimes start the artistic and creative realms because we have experienced some type of trauma. And doing sports, arts, and music allows us to kind of heal ourselves in a most profound ways. So when we actually discover our artistry and our creativity within this realm, we fear losing it so much so that we cling on to that trauma. And I think it's so important for us vocal coaches to kind of guide people in the direction of being creative and tapping into creativity, whether you are tapping from a traumatic experience and want to heal yourself, or whether you want to tap into it from a joyful place. Because we need to ultimately go into the healing and tapping into our creativity from that place. You can still be able to access all the dramatic creativity if you want, right? To write songs, to sing songs in a beautiful, expressive, and maybe even dramatic way, right?
Yes. That's so interesting. I love what you just described. And inevitably, because I'm working with more beginners, they're adults, I guess my part of their journey is to just say, this is how you can tap in. This is how you can start writing. And then it's up to whatever comes out. It can be joy. It doesn't matter. It's going to be a natural progression. But my job is to just kind of say, this is how you begin this process. And then just let it be what it is.
And the beauty about it is that when we actually let go and let ourselves float through the realms of it, we will cross anger, right? We will cross hatred or aggression, maybe even, and we can all express that through music.
These are things that you could do at home. You don't need a teacher. You don't need anything. I'm going to share some, and I'm also going to share some that are silent as well. So if you're in a place where you feel like you can't make any noise, don't worry, there's still things you can do. So here's maybe five things that you could practice and you could look at. So number one, you can do some sound effects, which are not singing so much, but character voices. So think of a cartoon character from your childhood, and you can do some sound effects. So you can go woo and and like the donkey we have from Winnie the Pooh going, oh hey guys, hey, whoa. So think of character voices and different sound effects, because I promise it's going to be so good for the voice, but you're doing it in a way that there's no pressure. You can just make any sound and it's still really useful. So sound effects. Number two, think about the style of singing that you really want to do and the style of music. And I would really recommend go to YouTube and find a live performance of an artist who's really at the top of their game in the style that you enjoy. And what I want you to do is watch how they articulate, watch their posture, watch how they breathe, watch lots of things closely. So for instance, pop rock, if you want to do big songs, I would watch a video of someone like Freddie Mercury and see what his mouth does when he sings. And then when you're singing your songs, because this comes up so much with new singers, look in a mirror and sing, and you'll be really surprised sometimes, because we don't really go that big for speaking, but for singing, we want to. So something like that. So watch your favorite artists. Shaping. So this is something that, again, comes up quite a lot. When you're singing songs, again, I'm thinking pop rock here. Try and remember this, rather than we want to go, oh. And people are like, what? But try it. So if you're singing some vowels, and you, again, use a mirror, and if you catch yourself singing vowels and going, like you're scared, like, feeling, try and go, oh, and just see what it does. Another tip, when you're singing your songs, just be mindful when you're singing. Can your neck still move? Can your tongue still move around? Is anything very locked? So just be aware and experiment a little bit if you can get some movement in there. Something for breathing that you can do as well. You can sort of crouch over and let all of your air go. So you're going to blow out and you're going to empty. And then when you're really empty, you're just going to breathe in, but you're going to let your body breathe in as a reaction, if that makes sense. So you blow out, you're empty, keep going, and then just let your body take the breath back in as a reflex, so that it just refills itself. And that's a really nice exercise, just to start being aware of how the body's working to breathe. You can also do lip trills, so you can go and sirens as well, so you can go and these are really nice just to start letting the voice move around a little bit, and move around more so than it does when we speak. So there are a few things that you could be looking at or you could check. So silent, if you can't make any sound, again, still watch the Freddie Mercury and articulate. You can sing a song and not make any volume and still be really successful in your practice. So there's a thing that's 80% of your practice can be done completely silent. So you go, and you can really go for it and not make any volume at all, but have a really successful practice session silently, which is really cool. You can still be studying your lyrics if you can't make any noise. You can sing quietly, which often really builds your control. If you can sing quietly, it's a really good thing anyway, to not make too much noise. And also, if you can't make any noise but you want to practice, you can be practicing things like your breath work. You could do that sitting on the bus. You can just be practicing being really conscious and thinking about your body and connecting your body to your thoughts. It's all silent, so you can just do this without having to make any noise and still be having some productive practice time. So there are a few things that I tried to go really quickly with them, but yeah, there are a few things I would say.
Absolutely. They are really, really valuable depending on what kind of goal that particular singer has, right? What kind of level they have, what they are. And once they have developed kind of the basics of their vocal technique, do you also help them to get creative now and to explore improvisation, for example, or harmonizing? Is that something you also do?
Yeah, you've actually just mentioned that was really cool. So again, yeah, the program I do, at first it's a little bit more technique led, and in the initial kind of lessons, I'm like their toolkit they can draw on. And as people go, then absolutely they're going to become more and more independent and creative. But quite early on, because techniques, sometimes I find it a bit, yes, this is right or it's wrong. It's a bit, black and white. It can be sometimes. But it's really, really nice to have some exercises in there that there can be any outcome and it's not right or wrong. So the ones you just mentioned, finding some organic harmonies and letting your voice move around, songwriting, things like that. There's not really improvising. There's not really any right or wrong outcome, which is perfect. That's really, really great to get creative. So 100% I would say to people, do those things in the mix of what you're studying as well. Let yourself improvise. Improvising is an amazing exercise because, again, if you're doing public speaking, sometimes we're so worried about the outcome and it having to be, a yes or no, it can really block us. Whereas improvising is such a good exercise because you're just having to think in the moment and something else might happen and you go, oh, okay, we're going this way now. And it gets you used to, you might have to make these changes and it's okay. So it doesn't matter if you're doing acting or singing or dance. I think improvising is a really, really, really strong concept and something to work on to help creativity. Creativity really is inventing or just being free in the moment to make something new. There's no right or wrong when it comes to creativity. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Absolutely. When I work with speakers, actually, that's one of their biggest fears, that when they're on stage, something happens, then they don't know how to navigate it. And all of a sudden, you don't have tools that you can go back to actually find a way out of it without people noticing it. Right? That would be like the best outcome. Something happens, you didn't cause it, right? You don't know how to do it, how to get out of it, but you have tools in your toolbox to know how to possibly navigate. And as you said, improvisation is tremendous. I got into improvising very early on, maybe 12, 13, when I discovered jazz for myself. And improvisation is like one of the biggest things in jazz. So that helped me so much navigate through all the public speaking gigs that I had, all the performances as a singer-songwriter that I had, because I was naturally confident then within myself. I knew how to breathe in that moment when something goes wrong and people notice that something went wrong. And you kind of still find the calm and the peace to acknowledge that something is wrong, but you know how to get out of it. You know how to guide not only yourself, your emotional state, because you could get anxious, you could get nervous, you could not know what to do, you start sweating. That's the worst case, right? Where you start shaking and you just don't know where to go. Right? That's like the worst that can happen. But when you actually have done that so many times at home, you improvised through different stages and styles, you know how to navigate your own emotions, how to calm yourself in an instant, right? It does not have to be long. And not only that, but you also are able to guide the audience, because for the audience, it is also a very discomforting moment when something goes wrong. When you feel uncomfortable, they will mirror it. And so the moment of bliss, let's say, of the story that you might have been telling, right? Or even as a singer, right? You have been singing and everything went well, and all of a sudden, a sudden break, a cut, right? And this bliss moment is broken. You have to know how to navigate yourself and the audience out of it, and you have to know how to make them comfortable, feel comfortable with this uncomfortable situation. And improvising is so incredibly helpful. And harmonizing also, I feel, goes in the same direction, because you kind of have to fit in the spaces where it is still harmonious, right?
Yes.
To find the harmony, right? Even in a dissonant chord, let's say, you still try to find the harmony. You try to find the gap where you fit in. And this is tremendously important. All the music education that I have received has made me so comfortable and confident in speaking even in languages that are not my mother language, like English, for example. It's my third language. And this helped me tremendously, being great at improvising and making mistakes, but being comfortable with it.
It's really lovely in life that they say, like, if you want to study something, don't just study that one subject, study other things, because it's really lovely how things can cross over and help us in other disciplines. Sometimes you never imagine what's going to cross over where, but things can be so useful to our development and progression in life.
How would you say, and I think this is one major thing that people have when it comes to their voices just in general, working with the clients and myself included when I started singing, speaking and writing and everything, confidence is one of the things that people talk a lot about. Would you say there is a magical method to actually build confidence? And let's stay only with the voice, because there are different levels and styles of confidence, but how to actually build confidence in your voice particularly?
So if I'm being honest, and every teacher is different, but for me, well, this gets me up in the morning, but I do think a little bit studying as a beginner, studying some technique. You don't have to read music. I don't read music, it's not that side of things, but just in your body and how your voice is going to work. I do think studying some technique, I find it really helpful to go through with people, because it gives you this toolkit of what you're going to be drawing on. Sometimes losing confidence is because you don't really know how to change a moment or what to do. So it could be any aspect of technique. But if you have a bit more of a toolkit and you've practiced, you know, okay, this is what I want from my voice. I've done it 100 times now. I know what to expect every time because I've practiced it. You're going to feel more confident about what you're putting across. And confidence to me is, I have this moment and I'm going to choose what I want to do with the moment. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says. This is what I want to do in this split second right now. This is my decision and I'm going to do it and I'm going to go for it. And that's confidence to me. Yeah. So confidence is the ability to take any moment that's right there in front of you, a split second, and you make a decision about how you want to continue. And if you have the freedom to do that, and in any scenario, that to me is confidence. And it's not something that's out there and big, and it doesn't have to be in the face of everybody else. It can be a really internal process, but that is confidence. And all of the learning that you can do in your music and the technique and building all of that goes into the pot of confidence. My golden rule as a teacher is never comment on what somebody's doing unless I can offer this positive pathway, maybe an alternative. If I can't do that, I'm not going to comment, because it's not our job to just critique. Our job is to really say, here's a fun idea. Do you want to try this? And then, I always want to help build people's confidence. That's the aim of the game. Really, even if they don't say it, everyone that comes in for lessons, that's really what you want to do. They want to build confidence. Yeah, it's really, really important on many, many levels. And practice as well. So somebody that loves performing but isn't confident, I do kind of like sometimes push and say, let's do it. Let's go and perform. And we're going to do it a few times. And don't worry about the first few performances, but just being there and showing up and going for it, you're going to get more confident over time to be used to a scenario that at first is so daunting. That's another thing. The first time someone ever performs, I'm often there because I'm working with beginners. I get this honor of being there for people's first performances. And it's a great process to go through, because someone comes off stage and, oh my goodness, they feel so proud. And they're like, I did it. And it's like skydiving. It feels amazing. So you feel really proud to push through those scary moments sometimes. And again, going through that is, you can't help but you're going to get a bit more confident each time. So do the scary things sometimes.
But what I found is that every time you encourage someone in their confidence, maybe it is their vocal sound that's particularly beautiful in that moment, or it is the vocal technique that they're using, or the emotional expression, or whatever it is, whenever you push them in their confidence, they automatically improve their vocal technique and their emotional expression, because you are allowing them to show more. Right?
True.
This is my observation. Whenever I push them in their confidence, next time they start singing or speaking, they are more confident. They show more. They show up even better, right, than the first time around. And I feel confidence is not the same, or it has nothing to do with perfection, right? Being confident doesn't mean that you can only be confident when you have performed perfectly, right? Everything went perfect. That's not confidence, actually, I feel. Confidence is kind of the ability to navigate no matter what, right? To trust your voice, to trust your body, to trust yourself, that you will find a solution out of any obstacle or challenge.
And trust is a big thing. So if you're going to go out there and find a teacher, I think it's important. Trust. Find someone that you trust, who does support you. Like you're saying, that's super, super important. Someone that's going to let you try things and be supportive. And you've got to trust, especially when you're starting out. Find someone that you trust.
Yes, and who is positive and encouraging, and is not only pointing out, and there's also a negative side to being only positive as a coach, I feel, because only saying positive things will not help them really see the full picture. Like, I think a teacher should be able to absolutely encourage you in what you're doing if it's really positive and good what they're doing, but at the same time find a language, in a pathetic language, to let them know this is the area that you're struggling the most with, and I can show you how you can actually get out of it. So I think kind of that balance will give people the best results when it comes to that. Not finding a teacher who's only going to bash you and to show you, oh, you're so bad at this and what's wrong with you. You don't need that type of teacher, right? Unless you want to punish yourself in some way, and that's not healthy either. Right? And teachers that are only positive, I would also be quite careful with that, because you will be able to really grow significantly once you have a 360 view. I feel growth is only possible when you fully have an authentic view of yourself and your skills, and have skills of self-assessment. Even, is the teacher able to give you tools into your toolbox that will help you at home? Like when you are with the teacher, right, that happens quite a lot. The teacher is there, they're helping, they're amazing, they're awesome in guiding you, but when you are home, you all of a sudden don't know what to do. And this can happen quite a lot. How would you help your students to actually have those kind of tools to self-assess at home?
This is where it's quite good to have milestones along the way. So exactly because of what you've just said, I've started bringing in informal quizzes that I do. So then we swap roles. So then the student gets an opportunity to say to me, okay, this is what we do here, and this is what we're going to do now. And we swap roles for that exact reason. Because sometimes as a teacher, we don't realize it, but I might be talking the whole time and blah, blah, blah. And how do I know if that's actually constructive? And they go away knowing. So it's quite nice in lessons sometimes to role reverse, most definitely. And it can be really interesting, an interesting process. So that's kind of something I use. And it's games can be good as well, and interactive things that are just going both ways. So I don't really want my lessons to just be one way all the time. It shouldn't always be just from me. So.
And when people, I think that also happens quite a lot, that they start comparing themselves, right? Let's say it's a person, an entrepreneur with their own business, right? But they do enjoy doing music, singing, for example, and they go ahead and they start comparing themselves with artists who have millions of followers and views and what have you, and the way they sing, and they start comparing their level to the level of that artist. How would you help a client or a student overcome that kind of comparison and level back to their level and actually advance from there?
We're all on such different paths that it's really difficult. I don't think it's healthy to kind of look at someone else's and pluck what you like from their path and say, oh, I wish I had that, because we don't really know what else has gone on in that whole situation. So yes, we see some aspects of another person's path and we like that, but yeah, there's so much more that's gone on in that world. It's better just to stay on our own and say, well, I like that, I'm going to use that, but I'm going to stay on mine and I'm okay with mine. And then, oh, I like that over there and I'm going to use that in how I'm going to move forward, but I'm still going to stay on mine. Mine's cool. I'm here. So again, that's what I try and really work on with my students. So thankfully, no one's ever really, everyone's kind of like, yeah, this is where I am. I'm happy. But again, I'm working with total beginners. So teachers that are working with maybe a lot more students that are touring and professional, they're maybe having to answer different questions, and those students are maybe in a different headspace. My students are kind of like brand new, saying, okay, how do I start on this journey? But don't get me wrong, they're very much inspired by these incredible artists and these lovely singers that are out there, and the inspiration is fantastic. And they say, how do they do that? Can I learn how to do that and have fun with all of these aspects? So that's what we do. We have fun with these artists that are around us.
And you said something very interesting. You don't know what else is going on behind that particular thing that you might be admiring in an artist. And I feel like with your own identity, you kind of have to stay grounded in your own circle. And of course, you can expand your circle, because that's what we after all call growth or personal development or whatever, right? Like you can expand, but it has to be a natural expansion. It has to be an authentic expansion. And sometimes we kind of strive for things that are too far away from us, right? Let's say a total beginner comes to you and their pitch is great. They can already sing some melodies and all that is great, but they want to sing wild runs, for example, right? Like Beyonce, for example, right? That would be quite a stretch, right? So people need to kind of go back to their own level and stage and notice what needs to happen for me to be able to do that, right? If you and this is like, the voice is such a delicate thing. I'm so careful with vocal health, especially when I train someone, because once you do one or two things wrong, it can quite damage the voice, especially when you do it consistently and you don't even notice that this is kind of a damaging thing that you're doing. So pulling people back and students back to their own level and showing them, actually not discouraging them, oh, you will never learn that, that's way too complicated, that's only something that Beyonce can do, so stop dreaming, right? That's kind of, there are teachers like that, right? Not me personally, because I like to encourage my people, encourage my students to achieve whatever they want to achieve. However, there are also limits, right? There are physical limits that we can meet. There are vocal health limits that we can also sometimes meet when someone wants to do something very specific. How do you handle those wishes?
I think as a teacher, I don't always have to explain explicitly what my steps are, but as a teacher, we have a responsibility to say, that's a great one. So really intricate vocal ones. We have to know, really, sometimes, do we go straight there and do we work on the steps that are direct? Or if I take a student over here for a little while, that's going to really help that. And if we then work on this, that's going to also really help that. And I don't always need to tell them exactly what that is, but as long as I know, then I probably can navigate and we'll get there in the end. And also what tends to happen is that I don't need to be, if something is damaging or going down there, I don't in the end need to be the person that tells the person that. They kind of suss it out in the end because they'll feel it and they'll feel, actually, this is better, this feels good, I'm going to go this way. So I don't always have to be that stopper. We're just meandering. And if that does crop up, I think the person normally feels in the end, oh yeah, no, that's a bit out now. So I don't need to be that person to say that. They'll feel it. It's like,
yeah, that is true. If they are very conscious with what is happening in their bodies, they will definitely feel it when they're straining their voices to get to those high notes or singing over time for too long time. They will definitely feel it, right?
Yeah.
Can you share a success story maybe that moved you personally with a student that you had?
Yeah, there's a few. And they would make me smile.
Oh, I'm feeling it.
This is the nice way for teachers. So she won't mind me saying, but so the first lesson, we were online and she had to cover the camera. So she couldn't be watched singing. She had to cover the camera. She went through the whole program and then got to the point where we realized actually she was this naturally amazing performer on stage, but had just never really, it was so scary that she had to cover the screen and not sing in front of me. And then turned out to be this incredible stage performer. And then she got married and she sang all the way through her wedding. And that's quite, you're already nervous at your wedding. That's quite a big day. But on top of that, she felt so comfortable to just let her voice be. So that was a nice one. And there was another lady, I think her first lesson, she cried, which crying is fine for me because it's not sadness so much, but sometimes it's really overwhelming to let all of this emotion out. If it's been stuck for quite a while, she cried. She'd never sung in front of anyone. And I remember when I went to see her, there were notes everywhere and scribbles and writing and artwork, and it was all everywhere. But again, she just never really had any feedback from somebody else, or she didn't quite know how to bring everything together. So she'd never sang really in front of anybody. And this was quite recent. And now she's on Spotify and she has music out and she's touring, even she's doing gigs, she's collaborating. So as an adult, you really, really can, if you let yourself and you just take those first few steps, I think it's quite incredible what you can achieve and the journey that you can go on. And she said herself, singing and doing the lessons, it's really been this self-discovery. She never expected that. It's sure, okay, music and singing, but the self-discovery that you can get as well is really lovely.
Oh, let us hear one more.
There's another lady, I think she's on Spotify. I need to find her Spotify. The Half Monster. So if you look for The Half Monster, and this is another lady, and she was fantastic, but she thought that if you wanted to do songwriting, you had to go to university, you had to have a master's, you had to do all of that. And she never in a million years thought that you could just write. And this is another person that now just started playing around on the piano, and just it all came out. And so it's been really lovely to watch her really get into her songwriting and doing some amazing things. And I think, I can't word it, but because she's doing it naturally, there's these amazing, incredible chords coming out that she doesn't even realize what she's doing. It's not so clinical, she's not doing this clinically, but what's coming out and the music is really, really, like, it's incredible. I couldn't even tell you some of the chords that she's creating, but so that's been really, really nice as well, because she's just got so much into the songwriting. And I don't know why there was the thought in her mind, like, nope, you can't just suddenly start writing if you haven't been to university. So we just all we had to say was, oh, no, you can write songs if you want.
That's a huge misconception that a lot of people have, that you need to know music theory, for example, right, to write some songs. But think back at a time when there was no music theory, right, a couple of thousands years ago. Like, how did people do music? By using their ears, obviously, right? Because the universe is built in a way through harmony, right? The frequencies that we have in this universe are stacked on top of each other that build the harmonic system that we have in music now. Now, there have been some alterations to the piano and the tuning of instruments, obviously, over the time of the last 100 or 200 years. But in general, the universe already will tell you what sounds good and what not. So I would also encourage people to, if you want to know more about music theory and you want to shorten the way of writing songs, and you want to kind of open up yourself to a new way and perspective of seeing music, like that was quite important for me back then when, after I went on a Europe tour with a jazz work camp, I decided I need to know more. Like, I feel music, I know how good it has to sound, and I already write and I already sing and I know all that intuitively, but I want to know, like, the behind the scenes stuff, right? I want to know the music theory. I want to know how composers actually create such extravagant pieces, like, because I wanted to be able to do the same, like orchestral pieces, piano concertos and all that stuff. That was kind of the thing that I wanted to know. But you don't have to know that, actually. If you trust your ears and you learn by ear, you will be such an amazing musician, almost better than someone who has studied music and has diluted almost their perception and their senses, their musical senses, what music actually is. And so I had to also be very, very careful when I was in university studying musicology to not let myself slip into that theoretical person that I never wanted to be. Like, respect to all those who are, but that was very, very important for me, because music is emotion. Music is how you feel, and this emotion is so much more important than knowing the name of the chord. Like, that was never kind of the thing that I was married to, so you can absolutely trust your ears, trust your gut and your intuition, listen to a lot of music. Try to get into many styles and try to find what you love, right? Where you feel home, and practice and go more into that, and you will find your style and your vocal technique with the help, of course, of some professionals. But it's definitely and absolutely possible.
Yeah. Absolutely, because if you're really formulaic about what you're doing and you've studied like that, you would see maybe going, see something is going wrong or making a mistake, and then go, oh no, I won't use that as a mistake. Whereas those mistakes can be the most beautiful thing. So if you don't have too much of that going on in your mind to say, no, don't go there, and you just go there, who knows where your music may go? So it's not mistakes, it's opening up to different possibilities in the music. So I don't know. So yeah, if you don't read music, don't take yourself out the game. You've got a lot to offer. You can do it.
Yes, especially when we think about different cultural music theories, right? When you only kind of listen to the Western music theory, you will be kind of very limited to the possibilities that how you can express yourself on an instrument or even with your voice, right? But when you actually open up yourself to maybe other musical theories like the Indian musicology or the African one or any other, right, that has more variability, in that sense, you will have more ways of expressing yourself. And again, music theory also is not so many people perceive it as something very fixed. They're like, this is the rule book and you have to follow it, and you can do that, right? But if you want to remain human, in my perspective, you have to allow yourself to find the freedom to explore every possibility of sound. Like, design the sound that you feel is your sound. Like, when we listen to music today, it almost can sound quite boring because almost every song sounds the same because they are following the same formulas, right? So to kind of get away from this, you need to explore.
Yeah, you're right, actually. One of the most important things you can do is listen to different music. Actively listen to music that you might not normally listen to. It can be incredible. I should do it more. I'm going to do it more.
Amen.
Yeah, love that.
When we talk about like, there's YouTube, there are so many different resources that we find online, right? And I know a lot of singers and a lot of people love to go on YouTube, just pick some random vocal exercise and then follow that vocal exercise to the T, and then wonder why it's not working or why they are damaging their voices. So tell me why it's absolutely stupid to go on YouTube and to follow the vocal exercises that you find there, and why it is better to actually find a professional that might tell you, hey, this is the video that you should use to achieve XYZ, right? I'm not saying don't use YouTube at all, but why it is better to choose a professional, a vocal coach that can help you and that can guide you step by step.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one. But I myself, early 20s, I was in that rabbit hole of there was so much, and I was like, and I was loving it. So I think, again, the same as that, the emotion and the technique, I think both can be really, really good. Use resources and go and have fun. And if it hurts or it doesn't feel, if your gut feeling is this doesn't feel right, find something else. It's okay. But you're never going to beat, really, like what we are doing now. You're never going to beat sharing the space with someone else and talking and having that energy transfer. You're just never going to beat it. And if you find someone who can guide you in music and singing, who can give you feedback, that's where you get transformation. I think, yes, use resources. That there's so much out there available. Use them to kind of supplement your learning. It's great. And I never tell people not to do that. But to transform and to experience transformation, finding someone who can guide you really is an amazing thing, because that person who's a professional, they might say to you, oh, have you tried this way? And that thing that they say you never knew about, maybe you would never ever have found it because you didn't know about it. So that person comes along and says, oh, what about this? You can't do that for yourself, and you can't really do that when you're finding resources online because you're going off what you already know. So yeah, finding a professional that can guide you is an amazing experience to do, and then use the resources as a supplement. I would say. I think
because of the feedback, I think without the feedback, your growth will always be kind of stalled or almost blocked. Like, yes, you can definitely become an amazing singer if you only use YouTube tutorials, but how long will that take? And how many mistakes will you make along the way? How much will you damage your voice potentially? Because if you are an extremely driven singer type, you will strive for more than your voice sometimes can handle. And so you will ultimately damage it. I see that so much. That's why I'm so enormously careful with it. Imagine you go, you feel any kind of pain in your body, right? Your foot hurts. Like, you don't go into the pharmacy and just buy any kind of medication. Oh, just give me anything, right? Probably it will help, right? You will never do that, right? You go to a doctor, the doctor assesses what's wrong with you, what's up with your foot, and then the doctor prescribes a medication, right? I feel the same thing. If you want to learn to sing, like, that's not particularly a pain or a hurt, but it's a goal, right? It's a goal that you want to achieve. You don't go on YouTube or find any resources that potentially say, oh, it's good for beginners. How do you know it's good for beginners? How do you know it's good for your style? How do you know it's good for your voice type? Because there are different voice types, and many vocal exercises only attribute to sopranos, if we think about females, right? Or for tenor voice types. Like, that's problematic, right? If you try to stretch your voice into a soprano, all the while you're a contralto, that's a huge problem, right? So you need a professional who kind of really sees your voice, really reflects on your voice, and knows what to do with it, like a doctor, right? And that's the best way how you can progress as a singer or as a hobby singer as well, because you want to feel joy when you sing, right? You don't want to go through pain. Like, that's not why you want to sing. You want to sing because you want to tap into that infinite, enormous, exciting, joyful space that will tell you so much about yourself and the world. So you want to make sure that you exclude all the mistakes that you could be making and actually invest in your instrument, because I don't know, I'm totally in love with the human voice because it's so flexible and has such a variety that, yes, I love other instruments as well. Like, I'm totally in love with the piano, but the human voice is enormously interesting as an instrument. And when you learn to actually use it, you tap into a powerhouse. No matter are you a singer or a speaker, that's like a superpower.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. And going back to the confidence thing as well, if you're working alone, especially, again, working with adults, so working with children, working with different demographics is really interesting. And adults, quite a lot of the time, we're spending some time unraveling some past trauma. Say, for instance, they were in a choir in school and someone said, you can't sing, don't sing mine. That stays with them for like 20 years. And so they are emotional trauma that you want to kind of move through. If you're working alone, you might not be able to do that quite in the same way as you can with someone else coming in and going, no, you're beautiful, you sound gorgeous, this is lovely. And that's going to break down something that, again, you can't always do that by yourself. But depending on your situation, just use the resources that you can access and that you can get. And if you can just have 1 or 2 sessions, that can still be really, really beneficial if you can find the right teacher.
What was one moment in your life that was so transformational, obviously in the realm of singing or music, that you will never forget, and then you will tell your children about?
Making this program, it's nearly finished. I've done 10 modules, and my students are going to find out in this podcast. They've been my testers. They've been testing it for the last couple of years. They didn't know, but they've been really involved. But making that, I'm so proud of it, and I really am, and I'm not afraid to say it's taken years, and I enjoy going through this with students, and I enjoy what it can do for people. And if I'm going to leave something behind, that's what I want. I'm really happy with it. So yeah. And the music I've made as well, because we drift off somewhere else, but the music I've made with my sister will kind of always be, and the songs that we've written. And again, this program, maybe that will stay and outlive, I'll be gone, but maybe people might use it. That's a really nice thought for me, that could potentially happen.
That's so beautiful. And of course, I will leave the link to the program down in the description and the show notes for anyone interested. And thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I can talk to you for hours.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.